Harlen Everitt was already late to pick up his son when he spotted the car stuck in the snowbank just off Route 9, its hazard lights blinking like a distress signal against the whiteout storm. "Of course," he muttered, pulling his beat-up truck over and jumping out, snow crunching under his boots. The cold slapped him hard, but he didn't hesitate. He couldn't just leave someone stranded, not with the wind howling like this. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out more like stumbled out. She wore heels in a snowstorm. Her coat looked expensive, tailored, and definitely not made for digging a car out of a snowbank. "You okay?" Harlen called, trudging toward her. She looked up, her cheeks red from the wind, her dark hair laced with snow. "It won't move. I've been trying for 20 minutes. He crouched by the tires. "Yeah, you're stuck good. You got a shovel." "I have a pair of Laubautins in the trunk if that helps." He looked up at her, raising an eyebrow. "I'll take that as a no." She exhaled, clearly frustrated. "I had a driver, but I insisted could make it myself. I was wrong." Harlen didn't ask questions. He went to his truck, grabbed his rusted shovel and a bag of sand, and got to work. She hovered nearby, trying to help, but mostly shivering. "Get in your car," he told her. "You're freezing." "I'm fine." "Lady, your lips are blue." She hesitated, then finally climbed back into the driver's seat. Harlen dug, spread sand, rocked the car back and forth with his shoulder. After nearly 15 minutes, he called out, "Try it now." The tires spun, caught, and the car lurched forward onto the road. Harlen stepped back, hands on his hips, breath fogging the air. The woman jumped out, eyes wide with relief. "You did it," she said, walking toward him. "Told you I would." He gave her a small smile. "Name's Harlen." "Brielle," she said, offering her gloved hand. "Brielle Dalton." Her fingers were freezing. "You sure you're okay to drive?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm fine. I can't feel my nose, but I'll live." He glanced at the sky. "Storm's getting worse. Where you headed?" "Downtown Boston." "From here, that's still over an hour. Roads are gonna be a mess." "I have a meeting I can't miss." He looked at her car. It was luxury, sleek, probably cost more than his yearly salary. "You're not gonna make it on your own in this weather." "I don't have a choice." "You do," he said. "Follow me. I'm going to pick up my son from school and we're headed back to town. There's a diner off the highway. Warm food, hot coffee. You can wait out the worst of it." She hesitated. "You don't even know me." "You were stuck in a snowbank in heels. I'm not leaving you out here." After a second, she nodded. "Okay, I'll follow." By the time they reached the diner, the snow was falling in thick sheets. Harlen carried his son, Weston, in one arm, the little boy bundled up in a too-small coat. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Weston said, rubbing his eyes. "I know, buddy. We're gonna eat now." Brielle climbed out of her car and followed them into the warm glow of the diner. She looked out of place, polished, elegant, and clearly not used to places like this. "Brielle, this is my son, Weston," Harlen said as they slid into a booth. "Hi, Weston," she said gently. Weston blinked at her, then whispered, "She looks like a princess." Harlen chuckled. "Told you he's got an eye for class." They ordered pancakes and coffee, and Harlen watched her try to blend into the small town setting. She was polite, warm with Weston, and surprisingly down to earth. No attitude, no complaining. "So Brielle Dalton," he said, sipping his coffee. "That name sounds important." She gave him a look. "What makes you say that?" "You said you had a driver, and Laubautins. You're either a celebrity or a CEO." She tilted her head. "You guessed right." "Which one?" "CEO." He blinked, seriously. "Brielle Dalton, Dalton Innovations. We do tech hardware." Was heading to a merger meeting. Harlan gave a low whistle. And here I thought I was saving some lost tourist. You were, she said, grinning, just one who owns a company. He shook his head. Well, guess that makes this a hell of a story. They sat in silence for a moment, the storm raging outside. Weston laid his head on Harlan's shoulder, half asleep. You're raising him on your own, Brielle asked softly. Yeah, his mom left when he was 2, been just us ever since. She looked at him differently, then less like a stranger, more like someone who understood the weight he carried. Can't imagine how hard that is. It's hard, he said, but he's worth every bit of it. They finished their meal, and Harlan helped Weston into his coat. Brielle stood up too, brushing snow from her sleeves. Thank you, Harlan, for everything. You don't have to thank me. I want to, she hesitated. I'd like to see you again. He blinked, like, see me. She smiled. Yeah, you saved me today. I don't usually meet people who aren't trying to impress me or sell me something. You didn't care who I was, that's rare. He studied her, unsure how someone like her, a woman with power, money, a life he couldn't even picture, would want anything to do with a guy like him. Are you serious? He asked. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, her voice low. Dead serious. And just like that, something shifted. She walked out into the snow, her heels crunching softly, and he stood there, holding Weston, watching her go, completely unaware that the woman he just pulled from a snowbank would soon change his entire life. 3 days passed before Harlan saw Brielle again. He was elbow-deep in a busted water heater when the door to the garage opened and a gust of cold air swept in. He didn't look up not until the soft clip of heels echoed on the concrete floor. I hope you're not still mad. I didn't let you pay for my pancakes. Harlan straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. She stood just inside the doorway, wrapped in a deep navy wool coat, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Not a hair out of place. You tracked me down, he said, genuinely surprised. I asked the waitress at the diner where I could find you, she replied, stepping closer. She said you fix everything in this town, including her dishwasher. He laughed once, setting the wrench on the workbench. Well, now I'm flattered and a little concerned. I wanted to say thank you properly, she said, and I wanted to talk to you about something. Over coffee. He glanced toward the office, where Weston was coloring at the desk with a box of mismatched crayons. Give me 2 minutes. When they sat down at the cafe down the street, Harlan ordered a plain black coffee. Brielle ordered a jasmine green tea. She looked perfectly at home at the small table, but he couldn't ignore the contrast, her polished calm against his worn flannel and cracked knuckles. I have a problem, she said as soon as the drinks arrived. I'm not great at corporate mergers, Harlan said, sipping his coffee. This isn't about business. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. I need a date. He blinked. A date? For a charity gala, tomorrow night. My board is watching me like hawks right now. My personal life's become a topic of interest, which is ridiculous, but here we are. And you want me to play the part? You'd be helping me out, it's one night. Dinner, dancing, polite conversation, no pressure. And what makes you think I know how to handle a gala? I've seen the way you handle crisis, she said, smiling slightly. You won't embarrass me. Harlan leaned back in his chair, studying her. I don't own a tux. I'll take care of that. My boots have more miles on them than your car. I'm not asking for a makeover, Harlan. I'm asking for your company. He hesitated, fingers drumming against the ceramic mug. And Weston. She nodded. I've already arranged for a licensed sitter, background checked, CPR certified, everything. She can stay with him at my place during the event. Figured you wouldn't leave him with just anyone. He stared at her for a long beat, then leaned forward. You planned all of that before coming here. I don't do things halfway. Clearly. He looked out the window. Snow was falling again, gentler this time. Why me? She tilted her head. Because you're the first man I've met in a long time who doesn't talk to me like I'm a stepping stone or a trophy. You're honest. And you don't care that I run a company most people can't even get a meeting with. He gave a low laugh. I've got grease on my shirt, and you want to take me to a 5-star gala. Exactly. He took another sip of coffee, watching her over the rim of the mug. One night. One night. And don't have to pretend to be your boyfriend or anything. She hesitated. Technically, it would help if people thought we were dating, but only for appearances. No strings, no expectations. He set his mug down. You're serious. Completely. He rubbed his chin, considering. All right, but if I spill wine on a senator, you can't fire me. I don't even work for you. She laughed, the sound low and real. Deal. They left the cafe an hour later, and she handed him a sleek envelope before getting into her car. The tux will be delivered to your place. The instructions are inside. He opened it as she pulled away. Inside was a printed itinerary, 2 gala passes, and a handwritten note. Bring your best self, that'll be more than enough. The next evening, Harlen stood in front of his mirror, adjusting the tie he still wasn't sure he'd put on correctly. The tux fit like a glove, tailored, expensive, and nothing like the clothes hanging in his closet. Weston sat on the bed behind him, swinging his legs. You look like the guy on the toothpaste commercial, Weston said. Harlen turned. That good or bad? Good, he gets the girl. The sitter arrived 10 minutes later. She was calm, professional, and had Weston building a Lego spaceship before Harlen even reached the front door. A town car waited outside, sleek and silver. Harlen stepped in, heart pounding harder than it should have been for a fake date. At the hotel ballroom, light spilled from crystal chandeliers. Every guest sparkled with wealth. Harlen stepped out of the car and nearly turned back around until he saw her. Brielle stood at the top of the steps in a floor-length gown the color of midnight. Her hair was swept back, her posture perfect, but her eyes softened the moment they landed on his. You clean up well, she said, stepping down to meet him. You don't look like you belong on Earth, he replied. She offered her arm, ready. He took it, and they walked inside together. The room buzzed with whispers the moment they entered. Men in tuxedos glanced their way. Women sized him up in a heartbeat, but Brielle didn't flinch. She kept her hand on his arm, introduced him with confidence, and never once let him feel out of place. As the night wore on, Harlen found himself laughing more than expected. She asked his opinion on things no one had ever asked him about: art, books, even a debate about whether real success was defined by money or integrity. When the music slowed, she reached for his hand. Dance with me. You're sure? I trust you. He led her onto the floor, awkward at first, until he found a rhythm. She leaned in, her breath brushing his collar. Thank you for saying yes. I still don't know why you asked, he said quietly. Because I needed someone real, she whispered. The song ended, but neither of them moved. And somewhere between the chandeliers and champagne, Harlen realized this wasn't just about pretending anymore. The next morning, Harlen woke up before dawn, still half in disbelief. He hadn't imagined last night. The tux was draped over the chair, the gala invite lay folded on the dresser, and Weston was curled up beside him, breathing steadily. He quietly slipped out of bed, brewed a pot of coffee, and leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to shake the feeling that his life had cracked open overnight. He had danced beneath chandeliers with a woman who didn't belong to his world, yet somehow, in the way she'd looked at him, it had felt like she saw only him, not the grease under his nails or the paycheck that barely stretched. At 7, a knock came at the front door. He opened it to find a delivery man holding a large box. For Mr. Everitt. Harlen signed without a word. Inside was a pair of leather boots and a handwritten card with nothing but an address and a time. Wear these, meet me at 9. He checked the clock. It was already 20 after 7. An hour later, he found himself pulling up outside a private airstrip, just outside of town, the kind of place he'd only seen from a distance when driving Weston to school. A woman in a sleek coat ushered him past a security gate and onto the tarmac, where a jet waited, engines humming. Brielle stepped out from the cabin door, her hair tied back, dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater. "Morning," she said, her voice calm, like this was something she did every Saturday. "You sent me boots and a plane," Harlen replied, stepping toward her. "Bit of a leap from snowbanks and diners." "I wanted to show you something." He glanced up at the jet. "Can't just take off across the country. Weston's with Mrs. Renner. She watches him during the school holidays, but I didn't plan on disappearing. We're not going far, just a few hours. She has my number in case of anything." "You talked to her?" Brielle nodded. "I don't leave anything to chance." He hesitated, then looked at the jet again. "All right, but if this is some kind of corporate stunt." "It's personal," she said. "Just trust me." The flight wasn't long. She didn't say much, just watched the clouds through the window, fingers loosely intertwined in her lap. Harlen didn't press. He figured if she'd pulled him out of his weekend for something, it wasn't casual. They landed near the coast, where a black SUV waited. The drive led them through a winding road flanked by pine trees until they reached a weathered gate with a crest carved into the iron. The estate beyond was sprawling, but not cold. The house had aged stone walls, ivy crawling up the sides, tall windows that held memories. "This was my father's," Brielle said as they walked up the drive. "He passed it to me when he died." Harlen followed her up the steps. Inside, the house was quiet. Not sterile like he expected, but lived in. Books lined the walls. A fire had been lit, fresh logs crackling in the hearth. "I grew up here," she said. "Back then, it was chaos. My brothers and I used to slide down the grand staircase on baking trays." He glanced at the polished banister. "Looks dangerous." "It was, but my father never stopped us. He believed in letting us fall hard and learn fast." She led him outside, through a garden stripped bare by winter, to a greenhouse set behind hedges. "I don't bring many people here," she said, unlocking the door. The inside was warm, filled with citrus trees and earthy scents. "It's where I go when things get too loud." Harlen walked through the rows of greenery. "Why bring me?" She paused by an orange tree. "Because this is the only place I've ever felt like myself, and last night. Think you saw that version of me." He turned to face her. "I did." She reached for a low-hanging branch, plucked an orange, and rolled it between her palms. "My father built Dalton Innovations from scratch. He started in a basement with 2 employees and a mountain of debt. I watched how much it cost him his time, his health, eventually his marriage, but he believed in legacy." Harlen leaned against the rough stone wall. "And you inherited that weight." She nodded. "Took over 5 years ago. Everyone assumed I'd sell. I didn't. I restructured the entire company, fought through 2 hostile takeovers, and tripled our market reach. But no matter how much I accomplish, people still see a woman playing in a man's world." "You don't strike me as someone who cares what people see." "I didn't," she admitted, "until I realized no one ever really saw me at all." He let that hang between them. The greenhouse hummed with quiet. "I know I asked you to pretend to be something last night," she said, her voice lower now, "but I don't want to pretend anymore." Harlen straightened. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer. That I'm tired of building walls, that when I'm with you, things are simple, honest. You're a CEO, Brielle. Fix pipes and drive a truck that rattles every time it hits second gear. I don't care about any of that. He searched her face, looking for any trace of performance, but there was none. Just her, standing in the scent of oranges and soil, offering him something real. I didn't expect you to be anything like this, he said. I didn't expect you to matter this much. Outside, snow had started to fall again, flakes catching in the branches. She reached for his hand, and he let her take it. You don't have to decide anything now, she said. I just wanted you to see where it come from, so if we do this, you're walking in with your eyes wide open. He looked around the greenhouse, the life, the warmth, the truth of who she was. Then he looked at her. I've never been afraid of walking into something real. She smiled then, not polished or poised, but soft and certain. Good, she whispered, because I don't think I can walk away from this now. Neither of them moved for a long time, as the snow fell softly outside, and the air between them shifted from possibility to something far more permanent. Harlen adjusted the cuffs of his shirt as he stepped into the sunlit atrium of Dalton Innovations headquarters, feeling more out of place than he had at the gala. The building was all glass and steel, polished floors stretching endlessly beneath his boots. He hadn't planned to walk into Brielle's world again so soon, but she'd asked him to meet her here, said it couldn't wait. The receptionist gave him a curious glance, but said nothing as he approached the private elevator. Brielle had already cleared him. He rode to the top floor in silence, watching the numbers tick upward. When the doors opened, she was standing by the window of her office, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the skyline. She didn't turn when he entered. I didn't bring flowers, he said, stepping inside. That's good, she replied. I'm allergic to lilies, and roses make me suspicious. He walked over, stopping a few feet behind her. Everything okay? I need to tell you something, she said, finally turning. Her expression was unreadable, wary, but not afraid. I'm listening. The board voted early this morning. The merger's been approved, which means effective next week, I'll be dividing my time between Boston and Zurich. Harlen stayed quiet. I didn't know it would move this fast, she added. I thought we had more time. You brought me to the greenhouse yesterday, he said slowly. Showed me pieces of your life no one else gets to see. Was that your way of saying goodbye? No, she said immediately. It was me trying to bring you in before everything shifted. And now? Now, I'm asking you to tell me what you want, because I've never been good at waiting for answers that don't come. He walked past her, staring out at the city she ruled from this tower. The roads below were already clotted with traffic, people rushing everywhere. I can't leave Weston behind, he said, and I'm not dragging him across continents just because I can't figure out how to let go of someone I barely know. But you don't want to let go, she said quietly. No, he admitted, I don't. She stepped closer. I've been offered a choice. The board wants me to oversee the international division, but could appoint a second in command and stay based in Boston. I don't have to go. He turned to face her. You'd give that up. I'd restructure things. The company won't collapse if I'm not in Zurich 3 weeks a month, but I need to know I'm not building around a fantasy. His jaw tightened. You think I'm a fantasy? I think you're the first man who's ever made me want something outside of work. And I don't want to lose that because I was too stubborn to ask you to stay in this with me. He let the words settle. Out the window, a plane cut across the sky. I'm not afraid of what this is, he said finally. I'm afraid of what it turns into if we drag it through half-meant promises and missed chances. Then let's not miss the chance, she said. I'm not asking you to uproot your life. I'm asking you to let me in. He reached for her hand, his grip firm. I can't offer you penthouses or press releases, but I've got a kid who thinks you're magic and a life that might be simple, but it's real. If that's something you want to be part of, then I'm here." She leaned in, forehead brushing his. "I want it, all of it." Later that week, Brielle stood beside Harlen at the edge of the school auditorium, watching Weston onstage in his class play. He wore a cardboard crown and delivered his lines with the seriousness of a judge. Harlen whispered them under his breath, mouthing encouragement. After the final bow, Weston ran straight to them. "Did you see me? I remembered every word." "You were amazing," Brielle said, kneeling to his level. "That crown suits you." Harlen ruffled his son's hair. "Told you she was good luck." They walked out together, Weston swinging between them, gripping each of their hands. Outside, the sky was streaked with gold, the kind of sunset that made the world feel paused. Brielle glanced at Harlen, her voice soft. "I've got something to show you." She led them around the back of the school to a quiet field where a sleek black SUV sat parked. Inside, on the back seat, was a large envelope. She handed it to him. He opened it and stared. "Is this what I think it is?" he asked. She nodded. "I bought the old Sinclair place." "The farmhouse." "It's been sitting empty for years. I had my team take a look. Structurally sound, just needs some updates. A proper kitchen, maybe a treehouse." Weston's eyes lit up. "We're moving there." Harlen looked at Brielle, disbelief creasing his brow. "You're serious?" "I want to build something permanent," she said. "Not just for me, for all three of us." He pulled her into his arms without answering. Weston hugged her leg, and she bent to wrap her arms around him too. They stood like that for a long time, tangled together beneath the fading light. And for the first time in years, Harlen didn't feel like he was holding everything together alone. He felt chosen. He felt home. The first real test came 1 month later. Spring had begun to thaw the edges of winter, and Harlen stood in the middle of the Sinclair farmhouse's overgrown backyard, sleeves rolled up, hands on his hips. The contractors had wrapped the framing work, and he was reviewing the blueprint sketches Brielle had asked him to look over before finalizing the next phase, something about the layout not sitting right with her. She'd been distant over the last week, buried in meetings and travel prep for Zurich. "Front entrance needs a covered porch," he muttered. "No way I'm letting Weston track mud straight into that new hardwood she picked." He was about to mark the change when her voice cut through the stillness. "You're moving the front door." He turned. She stood at the edge of the property, hair pulled into a loose braid, sunglasses pushed on top of her head. Her heels had been replaced by scuffed sneakers, and her coat looked like it had seen more use in 1 week than her entire wardrobe combined. "Not the door," he said. "Just adding a porch. You said you wanted a place to sit and watch the rain. Can't do that without cover." She stepped forward slowly. "I'm sorry I haven't been around. Zurich was more intense than I thought." "Didn't expect you to start laying tile," he said, keeping his tone light. "But I missed you." Brielle walked past the blueprints and stopped at the edge of the porch outline. "I missed this, all of it, but I can't keep splitting myself in two." He put the pencil down. "You thinking about staying overseas?" "I was," she admitted. "But then I realized something in that boardroom. I don't want to fight to belong in a place that feels hollow. I want to build something alive, tangible, here." He watched her, careful not to interrupt. "I delegated the Zurich expansion," she continued. "They'll handle it without me. I'm staying permanently." "You're sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything. I've spent years carving a space in a world that never gave me room. But with you, it's not about carving. It's about choosing." He stepped toward her, closing the distance slowly. "So where does that leave us?" She looked up at him, eyes clear. "It leaves us together, not because of a storm or a gala or a greenhouse, but because I want to wake up and know that I'm right where I chose to be. His hand slid along her jaw, tilting her face up. Then we build it, and we don't look back. She leaned into him, her lips brushing his with the kind of quiet certainty that didn't need anything more. That evening, they brought Weston to the site. The boy ran through the open frame of the kitchen, shouting about where his cereal would go and asking if he could have a ceiling painted like the night sky. Brielle knelt by him, tracing the floor plan with her fingers. "We'll put your bed next to the window so you can see the stars." "Can I have a dog too?" Weston asked. Harlen raised an eyebrow. "That's a big ask." Brielle grinned. "We'll see." Later, after Weston had fallen asleep in the truck on the ride home, Brielle turned to Harlen in the quiet of the driveway, headlights casting long shadows across the gravel. "I've never had a home that wasn't built on expectations," she said, "but this feels like something I get to create, not inherit." He reached for her hand. "Then let's make it ours, not perfect, just real." Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side, balancing blueprints and bedtime stories, paint swatches and pancake mornings. Brielle began consulting remotely, trimming down her hours without letting go of her influence. Harlen took on fewer repair jobs, focusing instead on the farmhouse, pouring himself into every beam and board. They argued, of course, about kitchen tiles, where to put the laundry room, whether the stairs should face east. But each disagreement led to deeper understanding, not distance. On a warm Saturday morning, their friends and neighbors gathered under the finished porch, strings of lights twinkling above them, music humming low in the background. Brielle wore a soft cream dress, her hair loose and curling at the ends. Harlen stood beside her in a crisp white shirt and the boots she'd once sent him, the leather worn in now, molded to who he was. Weston stood proudly between them, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked himself. The ceremony was simple. No press, no spectacle, just vows spoken beneath the open sky, promises made not for show, but for life. "I don't need forever to know this is right," Brielle said, voice steady as she looked into Harlen's eyes. "I just need every day we're given." He took her hands. "You walked into my life like a storm, and I didn't even try to stop you. I just knew I wanted to stand in it." They kissed as the crowd cheered, Weston clapping loudest of all. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the porch lights flickered gently above them, Harlen carried Brielle over the threshold of their new home. Inside, candles flickered on the mantel. A record played faintly in the background, something soft and old and full of memory. She laughed as he set her down. "We're ridiculously cliché." "And yet," he said, pulling her close, "I wouldn't change a thing." She rested her head against his chest. "So this is what it feels like." "What?" "Being fully loved." He held her tighter. "Yeah, it is." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, and the home they'd built together stood solid and warm against the night. A place not just to live, but to belong, to grow, to love without condition. And in that quiet, with nothing left to prove, they began the rest of forever.